I woke to a sound I could not name, like a train climbing the stairs, like a giant taking a breath in the cellar below my bed. It was 5:12 in the morning, an hour for bakers, milk wagons, and gulls, never for houses to learn new verbs. The bed flexed as if a hand had reached under the mattress and flicked it. The lamp rattled, shivered, and hopped. From the next room my wife, Alice, cried out. A single note that split into two as the floor went sly and sideways under us. I lunged for the doorframe and the doorframe began to walk. Plaster peeled in white sheets. A pitcher leapt from the washstand and broke into a new weather of water across the boards. Drawers spat socks. The wardrobe took 3 brisk steps and threw itself against the wall like a drunk confessor. We crawled, bruising elbows, until the table found us, and we found the table and pulled the table down around our heads. The chimney coughed bricks. The stove scooted. The wedding picture hesitated on its nail and then fell face down into the dresser's open mouth. Nails screamed in a language every house knows and pretends not to understand. Out in the street a horse let loose a terrible human sound, and somewhere far downtown a bell started ringing, as if it had been told a joke too large for words. The second motion was not a shake but a roll, long, mean, as if the whole city had become a rug being worried by a dog. The wallpaper split along its little roses. A cabinet door flapped without sense. Our prayers arrived out of order, not because God refused them but because time did. Then, like a fist relaxing, the earth uncurled. The last rattle ran through the dishes as a tremor runs through a frightened hand. Silence was suddenly the loudest thing we had. We stood up with the careful pride of people trying on bodies just returned from alone. "Are you hurt?" I asked. "I don't think so," Alice said, and tested her praise of bones. Arms, legs, neck, and laughed once in disbelief, the laugh of a woman who has seen her house try to swim. We stepped into the hallway. It was full of plaster snow. The neighbor's door hung by one hinge and blinked like an eyelid. A hairline seam ran the length of the corridor. Tidy work, as if a tailor had opened the floor to let it breathe. On the stoop we met a different city. The building across the alley leaned toward us like a conspirator. Chimneys had sat down hard where roofs used to be. The Powell Street rails had learned a new, undignified curve. People came out barefoot, clutching babies, bread, kettles, or nothing at all. A man in an undershirt stared straight up as if the sky had changed alphabets. A woman on the steps laughed too loudly and covered her mouth as if she had just sworn in church. Someone said, "It's over," and at once the lie went stale. From market came a drop, then a rumble, then a whole grammar of collapses. Smoke unrolled across the street like a warning the city had ignored too often. "Fires," I said, as if the word could put teeth back into the hydrants. The nearest hydrant coughed once and died. The mains had broken like carrots in cold earth. We ran inside, killed the stove, dragged the coal bucket to the yard, wrapped a satchel around our luck. Bread from last night, a tin of tea, our rings, the photo of my mother, a small Bible of Alice's mother, the few banknotes we kept for sermons of need. We left the good silver to its own judgment. Market Street was a quarrel between bricks and gravity. A 4-story warehouse had folded itself like bad pastry. The Call building stood up with a new, unhandsome tilt. Telegraph poles had developed a sudden piety and knelt. We lifted a door off a trapped leg. We shouldered a piano out of a parlor whose far wall now belonged to the neighbor's kitchen. We passed buckets along a line that had nothing at the end of it because water had stopped believing. Fire engines arrived, their horses frantic, the brass screaming. Hoses ran to hydrants that could not remember being fountains. The crews swore, then squared themselves for a different day's work. Orders bloomed. Dynamite! Blow a firebreak ahead of it. A lieutenant galloped past with powder and a jaw full of certainty. For an hour we believed in arithmetic, subtraction to prevent multiplication. But fire eats math. The first charges sent roofs and shutters into the air and made the flames leap streets they might have struggled to cross. A whump sat us down on our heels. Glass went to pebbles. Somewhere a gas main found its purpose and roared a new gospel. We took the hill to count our losses more clearly. From Russian Hill the map was drawn in hot ink. Lines of fire writing themselves where we knew the names. Down market, across south of the slot, licking the mission, testing the wharf. A shift of wind turned one blaze into a traveling carnival and pushed it into blocks that had been dinners an hour before. Families climbed around us with everything their hands could argue for. A canary still singing in its cage. A grandmother in a wheelbarrow, hat held on with both fists. A mirror wrapped in a quilt reflecting fire no matter which way it faced. A man wore 2 suits to save a suitcase. Children believed it was a parade and pointed gravely, learning a new set of colors. By night, the army had pitched ordered rows of tents at the Presidio. Golden Gate Park had become a nation of bedrolls under cypress spires. We made supper the way cities do when they have forgotten their recipes. Bacon fried on shovels, soup simmered in paint cans, coffee boiled black as regret. A woman I did not know tied a bandage around Alice's scraped wrist with a strip torn from her good skirt. "There will be bread in the morning," she said, as if speaking to a child. I decided to believe her because belief keeps hands kinder. Aftershocks toyed with us like a cat with house keys. Each time the ground flexed, a ripple ran through the camp. Mothers shushing the earth as if it were a feverish boy. Sleep visited in trances. I would startle at the creak of a tree and find myself half-crouched, reaching for a table that was in another life. The moon took us in with a grave, unamused face. On the second day, a rumor ran like quicksilver. Water at Hayes and Steiner. We found the hydrant, a small brass saint with a pulse. The stream it gave was thin but stubborn. Men cheered it as if it were a band returning from war. We formed a line. Boy, banker, stevedore, seamstress, and passed buckets until our shoulders spoke new languages. The water moved hand to hand like a prayer that did not require belief, only rhythm. A boy about 14 stitched the hours together with jokes so rude a calm day would have punished them. In disaster they sounded like hymns. Elsewhere, dynamite again. On Van Ness, a string of houses stepped one after the next into their own funerals. A general rode by with a face carved out of duty. Some cheered him, others cursed, and for once both parties were honest. Soldiers fired warning shots at men whose pockets had become magnets for other people's things. I saw a shopkeeper give away half his blankets and then discover he had just enough blankets left to give away the other half. "Take one," he told a woman clutching a child. "That is all I have." She took 2 and blessed him with a look that made him taller. By the 3rd day the roar fractured into growls. Fire still prowled in pockets, but the great red animal had eaten everything easy. The wind, bored, wandered off. The sky wore its smoke like a shawl too heavy for spring. We walked our old neighborhood as if we were archaeologists of last week. Rails twisted out of the streets like question marks. A clawfoot tub sat alone in a lot like a yacht in a burned harbor. A shelf of blue dishes had melted into an ocean frozen midstorm. In the mission, people raked the ruins with garden tools, coaxing up spoons. A saint with a blistered face. A photograph whose eyes were gone but whose mouth still tried to speak. We found our own corner. The stoop still stood, a gesture without a sentence. The bricks were warm, not cruel, like the last breath of a fever. Alice put her palm against them and said softly, "We're not homeless, we're cityless." The word pleased me so much it hurt, yet the city refused silence. On fences and walls chalk bloomed. "We are safe at the conservatory. Mother found, send word to 8th and Lake. Mary looking for Patrick. Have the children." At the edge of the park, a Chinese family boiled rice and handed bowls to anyone with 2 hands. A man refused and then accepted and then cried into his rice until it salted itself. A woman in a once fine dress tore it into bandages with the efficiency of someone who has been preparing for an event she hoped would never come. Churches set up on corners with roofs made of sky. The papers appeared as if by magic, thin, smudged, wrong in places, but the comfort of wrong news is sometimes larger than the truth that cannot yet stand up. One evening near the music concourse a cornet, a fiddle, and a drum dared to assemble. Without asking the city's permission they played the Star-Spangled Banner. People opened their mouths, then shut them, then stood. It was not patriotism exactly. It was a rehearsal for obeying something other than fear. A little girl I did not know slid her hand into mine. Her mother's eyes asked, My nod answered. We stood together until the last note let us go gently. Nights drafted themselves out of ember and ash. Sunsets arrived gaudy, as if the sky felt obligated to entertain beyond its skill. The bay learned a new habit of gold that it forgot quickly. The fairy horns tried their voices and found them hoarse. In the camps we became a city again, one favor at a time. Men volunteered to shovel. Women ran soup lines that could have fed an army. Children invented games with stones and hoops and a mathematics that kept score in laughter. A nurse taught us how to boil water in a coffee tin with a nail through the lip so you could hang it on a wire. Someone loaned us a blanket that had already been loaned 3 times and had developed a character. By week's end the flames were fewer and the arguments louder. Engineers with pencils and men with hammers began to draw on air. Wider streets. Steel frames. Sprinklers. Brick only. No more wooden cornices to leap onto a neighbor. We argued as if debate itself were mortar. The army eased its hand. The banks reopened with a solemnity that felt like prayer. Oakland shone across the water, steady as a promise. The ferries multiplied like saints in a crowd. What did we lose? More than money will ever be asked to count. The skyline we used to brag about. Hotels whose names people spoke as if polishing the syllables. Palace, Occidental, Windsor. Streets where we had learned to be ourselves. 1,000 small theaters of daily life that no one had known to admire until they were ash. What did we keep? Something harder to name. The habit of passing water hand to hand. The reassurance a stranger's shoulder gives when both of you are looking in the same terrible direction. The way a fiddle can play 2 emotions at once without shorting its own wires. I keep a pocket museum. A twisted nail like a question mark. A bead of green glass that used to be a window and is now an ocean caught mid-wave. A key that opens nothing and therefore everything. When I roll them in my fingers, I hear the first impossible sound again. The earth clearing its throat, and I remember our answer. We listened together. We put our hands in a line. We learned the alphabet of buckets. We pulled pianos to the curb because the street was kinder than the room. We wrote our names on fences in chalk so our names could find us. We vowed to rebuild on wider streets with sterner pipes and kinderplans, and then we argued about the cost like people who intend to live long enough to be wrong. Someday, coffee and fresh bread will replace this perfume of creosote and ash. New houses will throw clean shadows. A door will close in its frame with an honest click, and a woman will smile simply because doors should do that. And still, years from now, someone will pause on a corner, unsettled by a wagon rattling wrong, by a teacup's faint ring on a saucer, by the small private tremor a memory makes when it misses a step. The ground inside us will move a little. We will set a hand on brick, branch, shoulder, stove. We will listen for the city's answer. It will not promise what it cannot keep. It will say what it said that first morning and what we learned to say back. I am bigger than your plans. You are stronger than my fire, together.